Hey everyone, just want to encourage you to find us on your listening platform and give us a rating. Anywhere you listen to that has a rating system, go on over and give us a rating and maybe leave us a review. Let us know your thoughts. These ratings really do help. Thank you so much for listening. On to this week's episode.
Yo, Nicole and Eddie. Wow, Eddie has been finally acknowledged in the cold open. Gasp.
He was acknowledged like 2 episodes ago.
Oh, well, I finally acknowledged him in the cold open. How about that? Hey, Nicole and Eddie, question. What are some of the most prevalent vampire lore rules that you guys know?
Okay.
Burned by sunlight.
Burned by sunlight.
You have to invite them in.
You have to invite them in is a big one.
They feed off blood.
They feed off blood.
That's probably number 1. They don't like garlic.
They don't like garlic also, right? We've seen that in a couple of the Dracula series. It comes up.
Yep.
Anything else that comes to mind for anybody?
Well, like super speed, super strength. Sometimes you get flight.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a newer addition to vampire lore.
They sparkle.
They sparkle, also a new addition to vampiric lore.
That's not lore. That's just...
They're pretty pansexual.
Yes, that they are. Yeah, no. All these things I think are true. And I think the first 3 for sure will get explored in today's episode of the show, where we talk about Let the Right One In, Let Me In, and the 2022 version, Let the Right One In. They went back to the original name. And
yes.
I'm super excited because this is actually one of my favorite... We'll talk about the classification of this film, but it's one of my favorite films, both of them, as is... so, yeah, I'm looking forward to having this discussion with y'all.
All right,
so,
cool.
I'm Rolando.
And I'm Nicole.
And this is Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals.
An original podcast.
About...
Unoriginality and vampires.
And vampires.
If you were to say your favorite vampire, right? Not vampire movie or whatever, just like depiction of a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
What property would you say is your favorite depiction of a vampire?
Of a singular vampire?
Or just like vampire, yeah, like
vampiric lore.
Yes.
What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show. If I
one.
had to pick one specific one, it would be Colin Robinson, the energy vampire. I think that might be the most creative use of vampirism or definition of vampirism that I have seen on a TV show. Or I kind of honestly, I feel like it just reinvented vampirism in such a wonderful way.
Absolutely.
And the actor who plays that role, he does it so well. But yeah, I think that would be if I had to pick my favorite vampire since I've been watching vampire stuff, because shockingly I've seen so much vampire shit.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it's kind of everywhere.
It is. And one of my favorite shows. I was gonna say Buffy, right? I was gonna say potentially either Spike or Drusilla or even maybe Angel, but no, right now it would be absolutely 100% Colin Robinson. Eddie, what you scoffed at my decision there. What do I?
That you didn't choose Naja.
Nadia is good.
Eddie, what would be yours?
That's a good question. I guess because this is a show that I'm watching now too. It's What Would You Do Shadow, and it would be Nandor, the Relentless.
Yeah, Nandor's good. That's a good choice.
He's actually has become one of my favorite.
Probably because I think they're hinting that he might get into a relationship with one of the characters, and I'm here for it. But I just want them to just pull that trigger already. They're making it they're making me wait too long.
Yes,
it's either put out or shut up.
My philosophy in life.
What would be yours, Nicole?
Gosh, this is really hard. I mean, Dracula's iconic film-wise. At least I've never read the book, but I guess I gotta say the Vampire Lovers, just because it's a heavily sapphic vampire film. I
don't know it.
Yeah, I actually covered it on my You Should Watch This for October. But, people.
Very subtle plug there. I love it.
Yeah, a little subtle plug. But after I saw it, I just couldn't believe the fact that there was this 1970s horror movie where it just is this woman pursuing other women and women becoming obsessed with her.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty okay movie. But for that, it's like a masterpiece in my mind. I guess actually depiction of vampires would be Near Dark, the Catherine Bigelow 1987 film, where they're just depicted as a bunch of like gross nomads. Who are like really savages. And the word vampire is never uttered in the film. But one, they clearly are.
Right.
They run away from sunlight and they feed off of blood. They have those two things in common. They don't age. They never die other than from sunlight. And they're just terrible. But you kind of are rooting for them. It's interesting.
That is interesting. That brings up a good point. What is your opinion on movies or even TV shows where they're about something, but we never say that word? Like a vampire movie where they don't say the word vampire, right?
Yeah.
Or a zombie film where the word zombie is never used. Like, what's your opinion? Do you have like an opinion on that?
I mean, I actually kind of like it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't necessarily mind it when we say the word, oh my God, it's a vampire, like
right.
I like both. I like also just like sometimes, things don't need to be said. We've seen vampires 1,000,001 times. Do we really need to say, oh my God, I'm a vampire, or you're a vampire?
I guess it depends on the context, right? Like, I think if it's a character realizing that X person is a vampire, like, why wouldn't you say vampire?
Yeah.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
true.
Or
But
a zombie.
But then it's also like interesting when you don't say it too, because then there's enough for you to be like, why aren't they saying it? What's the reason there? Are they trying to say something? Is this not even a vampire? Or a zombie?
Well, I feel like when they don't identify it, I just wonder too if this is the first time they're experiencing in any form this creature. So like having no lore or no mythology at all to base their experience on this creature. So this is something new. Because I feel like if it's, if it walks like a duck, like you'll call it out, you know, even to give it, because we always want to name something, so we can control it, or at least we can control the fear that we experience it. But when you don't name it, makes me think, first of all, it's like an unknown, and it's an unknown, and you have no basis at all of this new experiencing that you're having with this monster.
Yeah.
So I find that interesting.
Yeah,
Nice.
I suppose the reason I was asking that was because memory serves correctly, in 2 of the 3 properties, the word vampire is mentioned in the context of when the character realizes that one of these other characters is a vampire, they say it, which puts us into the understanding of like, okay, so the lore of the vampire exists in this world, and therefore we have to assume that like, well, then that brings up the questions of like, well, are the rules that they engage in, like, how did they discover this on their own, or did they just happen to have an understanding of vampirism just from like urban legend, and like learn, you know what I mean? It's a weird thing when it comes to this subject matter, which is actually why I don't know. It's just something that I thought about as I was watching all 3 of these things. But yeah, I guess we might as well just kick things off, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. One really quick thing I want to say is that you can say it, vampire, but then completely, disregard all the other lore and make your own, just like in Twilight.
I mean, they still had some of their rules, right? Like they were allergic to sun.
Well, he could exist. I mean, he went to school.
Yeah, but that's because that area was so cloudy, it blocks off the UV. That's the literal reason why he was able to go to school.
But that's the thing, like sunlight doesn't kill them, it just exposes them.
Yeah.
Is that what happens?
Yeah, they glitter. What happens when they go in the sun.
Nicole, he doesn't know.
Yeah, I do.
You never watched Twilight?
I saw the first Twilight. I've never seen the others.
But that's also like the major criticism of the film is how much they play with vampire lore, especially because they named these characters, like they said, "I am a vampire." Edward,
right.
Like confirms
There's like a scene where like she says, "It's like say what I am, vampire."
Are you scared? No. All right. Anyway, I mean, there's so much to vampirism, and we're actually going to maybe continue that next week with another property.
If not next week, the following week for sure.
Yes, for
it's all
sure.
depending on my busy schedule, guys.
Yes, heads up there. If you're a Rolando fan, he might not be here next week. We apologize in advance. Oh. So we are covering Let the Right One In, the 2008. It's so weird to say 2008. I guess it's 2008.
2008. I think
when did it officially start being 20? I guess 2010, right?
2010, I think, yeah.
Yeah. The 2008 Swedish film. We're covering Let Me In, the 2010 film. There we go. And the brand new Showtime series 2022, which all are pretty much their own rendition of a novel, which I didn't even know. I thought the film was original.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't take away from it, obviously. Right. But like, I was just kind of shocked to know. Because also when I was like, why are they turning this movie into a TV series? Well, they're not. They're just adapting the book for a television series. So
yes, which makes me wonder if like if the TV series is more
based on the book.
Yeah, based off of the book, because Matt Reeves, who wrote and directed the middle, Let Me In, he said like the original film, it really stripped down the book to just really focus on the relationship of the kids, and that's the movie that he wanted to tell also, not really tell everything else. So which makes me wonder, it's just like, oh, is all this other stuff that's happening now in the TV show from the book or not, or is it just like created for the show? We'll find out. We'll discuss.
We will find out. Yes. But I remember when Let the Right One came in, because it's not often that people in America are made aware of foreign films. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it about us, but we just watch a lot of our own films. And when a film from another country hits so hard that like everyone watches it, not just like film people or like film savvy people, it's like everyone I think knew about this film, at least was aware of it. And like a lot of people were watching it, so much so that they rushed the American remake into production 2 years later. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a huge hit. So did you see this movie when it came out in 2008?
No, I don't think I saw it when it came out. I saw them both like almost right next to each other. I actually saw Let the Right One In first. So this is like the first time I think I've seen these in order. But the first one I saw was Let the Right One In. Then I saw there was an American version. This is like the early days of streaming for Netflix, right? I just happened to sit down. I was just like, oh, I watched this movie. I liked it, and then I'm like, oh, there's an American version. I don't have to read subtitles, and I watched that one, and so that's how I saw them. And then when I found out of the blue that Showtime was making a series, I was just like, no fucking way. Like,
yeah, seriously.
How was my first question, and then I was just like, well, we have to cover it because I do love the first two iterations.
Yeah,
I do think, I'm gonna say this. Like, I actually do like both of them. I think they're both different films.
Okay,
while still being the same.
And that's such interesting how they could complement each other and yet be their own films. So I did see this movie in 2009, I believe. I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it in DVD with some friends of mine who were like, "Oh, we hear this, Swedish vampire movie is dope," and that's it. I mean, like. That's how big it was. And I was immediately taken with it. I was like, wow. Because also this movie was so different comparatively to other things that were coming out in 2008, or at least me as a 22-year-old was watching. And revisiting it really does hold up. So, Eddie, you had seen this film before?
No, this is the first time.
Wow. So did you show it to him before the TV series, or?
No, I had him experience the opposite, right? Yeah. So I had him watch the TV series. He was interested in the subject matter, so therefore I put on Let Me In. I figured that's a more palatable experience for like American audiences because you don't have the subtitles. The director of Parasite said this, I think, when he won his Oscar, right? Like, it's just like Americans need to get over subtitles.
Yes.
Right? But I, myself, an American, and even though I do work in media, I understand. It's just like, but no one wants to read. Because the problem with the subtitle is you're reading a subtitle and it sometimes you can't focus on both. Some people just don't have it in them to focus on both the visual while trying to read the subtitle. And I understand that. Yeah. Because I experienced that. So that's why I empathize. So that's why I gave Eddie Let Me In to watch and stuff. And
It's interesting though, because it's kind of like the perfect film to watch with subtitles because it's not very dialogue heavy.
This is true. Yeah.
So I suppose if there was like, an international equivalent to like Aaron Sorkin or Tarantino, which is very dialogue heavy, then you wouldn't want to be reading subtitles the whole time. But anyway.
Well, it's been so long since I'd rewatched them that I just forgot like how much dialogue, if there were any involved and stuff. I just really remember like the core base of the story, because I have said this before. I don't revisit movies too often. So
this is true.
I even though I do like both these films, it's not like they're not movies that I would like say like every Halloween, let's watch this movie, because even though they're classified as horror, I think deep down they're really romantic stories. They're coming of age romance stories.
Yes, and maybe now is a great time for us to talk about the story. Essentially, this is a story about two kids in quotation marks.
Well, but yeah, I think that's a fair quotation mark to put. One is definitely a kid.
One is definitely a child, and one says, "I'm not a kid."
Right.
To an extent.
Just
so
passing as a kid.
Yes. There's a 12-year-old boy, and he is a bullied boy, a very isolated in his social and personal life boy who lives alone with his mother and who develops a friendship with a girl who moves in next door in his flat. And that's essentially just the plot. But to summarize, we pretty much watch their friendship develop as we learn that this new girl, Eli, and the boy's name is Oscar, is in fact a vampire. And how the film spends a lot of time showing how she is living and how she exists, how she is provided to since she is a child at the end of the day, or at least appears to be a child. And then the repercussions of her actions. Meanwhile, while Oscar is going through, all the turmoil that he is experiencing in his life and the confidence he gets by having her as a friend. That is just my summary. I mean, we'll talk about some scenes essentially. Right. But this film is shot in the western part. Well, I don't know if it was shot there, but it takes place in the western part of Stockholm during, I'm assuming, winter, because it's just snow everywhere.
Is it?
I don't know.
Isn't Sweden? Yeah, I was gonna say, aren't they always?
I guess,
snow?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe not always.
I don't know geography, but like, I felt like Sweden makes sense for a vampire to hang out, because aren't they like almost always in eternal darkness? Or is that just my interpretation? I think I think in the winter, like, they're just always dark. I don't know. Swedes, if you're out there, let me know. Please correct me if I'm wrong of my understanding of Sweden, because I don't think it's right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so the aesthetic of this film is there's snow everywhere, and it just feels so empty and isolated. I mean, there's a lot of wide shots going on. Yeah, and it's cold. So it feels kind of miserable from the moment we meet Oscar. And yeah, I mean, we see how regularly bullied he is. He has a mother, Yvonne, and also like his social life is affecting him to the point where he's actually collecting clippings from newspapers about murders and stuff.
Yeah. Well, when we meet him for the first time, he's like practicing stabbing, right?
Yes, he is.
Which, I mean, that's something that gets explored in Let the Right One In, the original film, right? I think the reason it's hinted that the reason Ellie and Oscar form a friendship is because she sees that he has like killer instincts in him, and therefore does not feel so different from him on some level, right? Which is kind of dark and twisted.
Yeah, it is actually. Like, Oscar could grow up to be a serial killer, and most likely will. Right,
for her, because that's
for her. Yes.
That's what her handler kind of does. Is what we've kind of come to learn.
Yes. So Eli and Oscar meet at their playground, and like immediately the signs are there. I mean, she like practically floats down off of like the playpen.
Is it Eli or Ellie? I've been saying Ellie, but it's also Swedish, so I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll
go with both.
Yeah,
either or. Yeah, and that she's recently moved in with an older man, Hakan. Yes.
I don't think I ever say the name. I think you just get that from the credits.
Yeah. That's and pretty much like they talk for a little bit, but it's like, okay, we can't be friends.
That's what she says right from the
Yeah. And we see why, because her handler, essentially, who we think is her father, maybe, or uncle, or whatever, we immediately see someone that he kills someone for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that scene was just so good. You know, it's like this faraway shot where he's just like walking, and this like man comes past him, and he pretty much, what does he put on him?
I
That
think
makes him
it's like
pass out?
some noxious, not noxious outside. It could be chlorophyll.
Yeah, something like to that extent that he puts over his mouth. The man passes out, and then he pretty much kills him and hangs him upside down to drain him of his blood.
Right.
Like, this happens pretty immediately in the movie.
Yep.
And he actually is prevented from finishing the job by, you know, some passerbys with their dog. You know, so like immediately, it's like, honestly, as a script, that's great. You know, like a character has a desire, they want something, they go for it. Something happens that prevents them, you know, from achieving it. And it's just like all these things that Hakan, like, he can't just, this isn't easy for him at the end of the day. He goes through a lot of issues just to obtain what essentially is food for Eli, for Ellie.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, I mean, no one said having a vampire would be easy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you wanted a vampire for a daughter? Well, this is what it is. Like, which is interesting, too, because the movie doesn't really talk about backstory all that much, right?
No, not the Swedish one.
It's just not interested in it. And it poses even more questions, but that's what works about it, you know? Like, who are these people to each other? You know, what is their relationship? And essentially, yeah, he's the handler, and he goes through a bunch of different situations trying to get food for her, and he fails. To the point where he ends up in the hospital.
Yes, because he almost got caught.
He almost gets caught, yes.
He almost gets caught, so he decides to throw some acid on his face.
Yeah, to disfigure himself.
In order to disfigure himself and therefore conceal his identity. And then he gives his dying breath to Ellie so she can feed one last time.
And it's like, pretty much you're on your own. Like, I think he was just giving up. Like, I can't do this for you anymore, kid.
Right. So I had read some reads. The reads on this character. That in the Swedish version, the Hakan character is played more pedophile-ish, right? The way he lingers, looking at the kids changing in the locker room, for example, right, is in retrospect creepy. And the coldness between Ellie and him is much more apparent because any sign of affection that she shows him, he's grateful for. And it's kind of, the implication there is just like, maybe it's because she still resembles that thing that he desires at young age.
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah. And creepy. I
love
that.
That makes the Swedish version much creepier, right? Like,
absolutely, yeah. And that's the thing too. It's like nothing's ever really confirmed in the Swedish one, for sure. So the more you could read into it, the better, honestly. But yeah, so she kills Hakan, sorry. And I guess later that night, you know, feeling kind of like alone and abandoned, you know, she goes to Oscar's room and they kind of start this relationship of sorts.
Yeah, he asks her to be his girlfriend. She agrees, and I think it's like shit starts hitting the fan like pretty soon after. I mean, shit was already hitting the fan for Ellie, but now Oscar's life starts swinging, you know, into turmoil.
Yeah.
At that point.
I mean, at the risk of, you know, summarizing the entire film or going kind of like scene by scene, you know, what are some like moments that really worked for you upon this rewatch?
So the first kill that Hakan does really works for me. I think it's so effective and like give it up to the filmmaker, because unlike American films where we're constantly cutting, this one just holds onto this shot for a while, and we just see this murder kind of it almost felt like very voyeuristic. Yeah.
And like you were complicit.
So, yeah. I mean, my next favorite part of the film is actually the ending when we hold on the kid being drowned, right? Because Oscar's being drowned by the bullies, and they're retaliating because he stood up to them at Ellie's insistence. And as he's being drowned, like all we see and hear is like brutality happening above him as Ellie comes and saves the day, and all we see are body parts just falling into the water. And I thought that was effective and a choice not to show the violence, just show the aftermath of it.
Yeah.
And like that.
Again, less is more. I'm telling you.
I agree. Less is more. And yeah, I enjoyed that part. Yeah.
So for me, I would say there's a sequence in where Ellie has to feed, and she feeds on this girl, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
But Virginia survives the attack, but then all of a sudden weird things start happening to her. And pretty much every scene involving this poor girl, it just like gets worse and worse for her. Like at first she's like, oh, I'm reacting weird to sun. Huh.
That's unusual. It must be rabies, is what I would assume.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, shit.
She goes and visits the old woman with all the cats.
Mm-hmm.
And all the cats just gets attack her, like, get the fuck out of here. And then she's like, okay, I've been through a lot. I'm going to go to the hospital. And when she goes to the hospital, she's like, oh, can you open the light, just so I could see it? And then she burns to death because she's a fucking vampire.
Incinerates.
Yeah,
I think that's a good sequence. I actually do think the burning is more effective in the Matt Reeves version. In my opinion, I think it's visually. I mean, the visuals of watching someone burn are gross, but like Matt Reeves has like, it's not that it's bigger is better, but like the fire, the way it consumes like an innocent bystander, I think made it much more gruesome. So that's like.
Yeah, it's just really nice because when you watch the film, you're kind of wondering, what is this film about?
Mm-hmm.
And it works differently, obviously, from an American film, and where there's like a clear, inciting incident, and then this is the objective of the movie, and do they get it? Yes or no? It's not that. It's this very slow moving kind of just love story. And it's just a bunch of scenes or a bunch of short films. You could say that Hakan has his own short film that's cut up in between Eli and Oscar's short films. That's cut up in between. Then all of a sudden they introduce Virginia's story.
Right.
And it's just like, well, what if somebody got turned into a vampire and then they didn't know it and they died?
Yeah, because Virginia's story does feel, in this film, like the most isolated out of all. Like, yeah, she is, it's a result of Ellie's actions, but she, it still feels removed, even though we did follow her around bits and pieces here, and because she lived in like the same building complex as they all do, right?
Yes. And it intertwines because her boyfriend then tries to, tracks down Eli. That's
right. It was the boyfriend who finds Eli, and then he dies in cold blood at Ellie's hands, and
Yeah. But yes, and then like the whole short film of like, someone, what if there was a man who had to provide for a vampire, and everything he went through. And it's just all these stories, neat little stories that are intertwined together almost. Like, to me, the film feels almost like vignette-y in that way. I just made up that word, vignette. It feels full of vignettes. And at the end of it, there is kind of no resolution other than the fact that Oscar and Eli kind of have their own let's run away together and live kind of happily ever after in our own demented way.
I mean, happily ever after is not, but it is...
Well, for who? Happily ever after for who? I mean
the only one who wins is Ellie. She has, her familiar almost. I guess that's what we could call these guys, right? Like they're familiars.
Yeah.
Dracula had Renfield. Nandor has Guillermo. Yeah. So now all these versions are these boys that are kind of being, what's that word that like Republicans love using with gays?
I don't know.
Shit. They're constantly calling us, oh well, it'll come to me.
Not gaslighting, right?
Not gaslighting. The one where...
Gender?
No. Agenda. It's, what's it called? It's the word that means... Like we're being influenced, but like it has like a negative connotation, usually with like sex work,
brainwashing, like something.
No, not brain. God damn it!
Corrupting.
It's like not shadow, chaperoned.
No. I know what you mean now.
Yeah. See, why can't I remember the word?
Not like grooming.
Grooming.
Grooming. That's
Yeah,
it.
That's it. He means
Is it
grooming.
grooming?
Ellie has been grooming these young boys to be her servants. I finally got to it.
I'm gonna isolate that as the soundbite of the episode. Yeah, no, she really has, and that's the thing too, is that they're not like necessarily her slaves. Kind of like Guillermo and We Only Have
What We Do in the Shadows.
What We Do in the Shadows. Sorry, he is kind of in this way, too, like the handler groomer kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Willing participants in this, and Renfield he was sort of brainwashed by Dracula in that case, like he was kind of he was turned insane by him, and that read could be, well, Dracula is this evil LGBT community icon. Of course he's going to brainwash Renfield. You could read that on that one, but in this one you can't read that.
Right. No, yeah.
Like he's as sick as demented as her.
Yes.
So I mean, I wouldn't read that on Dracula. Others could read that on Dracula. Just want to say, I don't read that. But yeah, and let me in. I didn't get a chance to finish this film.
What a bummer.
I just had, I've been watching a lot of horror movie content, and I think at one point I was like, I need to like watch Doris Day movie or something.
Okay. I mean, that I understand because do you watch the stuff that you're recommending on your TikTok?
I would be full of shit
I guess,
if I didn't watch these
Are
films.
you rewatching, I guess is what I should say.
Yeah, so it's actually a combination of stuff I've seen and stuff I've currently been watching.
Mm-hmm.
And I set a challenge for myself to watch a certain amount of horror movies. And since I'm, putting all this content out there, it's like also making me meet my challenge.
No,
so.
Nice. Well, no, Let Me In by Matt Reeves, who I think we mentioned it when we did the Batman episode. I completely had forgotten. And when I saw his name show up, I was like, Matt Reeves did this? And I was like, kind of excited. I was just like, oh, this is like one of his earlier films. Like this is before or after. Like I don't even know where on his after Cloverfield Lane.
I actually think that Cloverfield, the first movie, was before Let Me In, but Cloverfield Lane was after, if I'm correct.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. He did Cloverfield also, right?
I think yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there you go. So, but it's interesting watching him, in retrospect, watching him adapt this film, right? Because that's what he basically did. He remade the film, and it is an American remake. And I think he's gone on interviews to even say as much, that it is he wanted to Americanize the film, but he did not want to completely strip it away of like the original film that inspired it. And I think he actually did a good job of like kind of just turning this Swedish film and making it palatable for American audiences. There were subtle enough changes, I think, that like it didn't change the story too much. Maybe we introduced a few different characters here and there, but overall, the core sentiment really focuses on the love story between, in this case, Abby and Owen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, what I did see was that this film decided to do like the classic storytelling trick, which is start in the middle and then go back. How did we get here?
How often was that done in 2010? That's a lot more contemporary, I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, like, super old school is like you start at the end and then the person literally tells you how they got there. I don't know. I do feel like it has been something that would be like maybe last 20 years with more focus in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. So I can't really pull too many examples. Okay. But I would say this is an early... Yeah, no, I know. But this is definitely an early adopter of kind of like that storytelling method, which I feel like nowadays is kind of almost
that's
too much.
Like almost standard, even for TV shows. Like start in the middle of the season and then like, how did we get there? Hopefully hook enough audiences, right? Yeah. I'm looking at you, Revenge. I ate that shit up, though. Yes, it does start off in that way. In retrospect, I would agree with you. Does it need to? No, because I think the story's compelling enough where, like, I don't need to see a guy dead in the first like minute. So I don't know. I don't know if we needed that, but I did. I still love this film. I actually enjoy the shit out of this film. And actually rewatching it with someone who hadn't seen it, I was just constantly looking at his reaction. I'm just like, because I have recommended this film before to other friends, and they wanted, they were looking for horror and stuff. I'm like, oh, well, I saw this film. Let me in. It's good. Check it out. And they, I recommended it, and then after a few people had seen it, they just didn't like it. They thought it was boring. And I was just like, well, thank God I didn't recommend the Swedish version to you guys.
Yeah, seriously.
And after that, I remember soon after I stopped recommending films to people in general. As a result, I was just like, fuck y'all. If y'all want to appreciate good movies, then I'm not going to fucking recommend anything.
Oh my gosh. Who do I know this person that ruined this
No.
for you? Because, okay.
No, you don't.
Well, I'll
These
smack
are people
them.
from the past who used to work with me in Stop and Shop. But if you're listening and you know who you are, I just hope you ruined that for everybody.
You just seriously ruined so much. I mean, Rolando's seen some good ass films, guys. So, way to ruin it.
Xanadu.
Okay. I personally love Xanadu. So.
I knew you would. How did I know that you would?
So up my alley. But yeah, so this film begins with an ambulance, taking this man who pretty much he's disfigured, and they're taking him to the hospital, and while he's there pretty much they bring him there, and while he's there, I think
the cop?
like a police officer comes and
The
tries
detective.
to question him, but then the man pretty much jumps out of the window and he leaves behind a note which reads,
I'm sorry, Abby.
I'm sorry, Abby, and that's how this one begins. And why do you think they changed her name? Just because Eli's not a very common girl's name? I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's the only
more?
reason that's the only thing that comes to mind. Like, I don't know why.
Yeah, because a lot of other names stay the same. Like Virginia is still Virginia.
Is there
But,
Virginia?
That's the one who gets turned and doesn't.
Oh,
realize
her
she
name was.
got the
I didn't know her name was Virginia. I didn't know she had a name.
Yeah. Well, while looking at the cast after.
Okay. Yeah. Technically, Hakan didn't have a name
yes.
in this one either. He,
Yeah.
I think in
It's so
like
crazy.
message.
Yeah.
Let Me In has a message boards guy. Like there's like actual followers of the book and the movies and now the TV show. They have their own message board and
Wow.
they're constantly, people who have read the book recently or seen the movie will ask questions and then like all these people will chime in. But Hakan is one of those characters that was never named in either of the two films and stuff. Like it's just a name that you should learn after the fact, after the credits.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting that, I didn't even realize that because I like that I processed their names after I looked it up and stuff.
But yeah, I don't know why change the names.
But so then after this scene, it goes back and we go, 2 weeks earlier and there's Owen and we see, this young boy played by Cody Smith McPhee, who actually we might know nowadays from The Power of the Dog. And now he's actually going to be probably more prolific in movies. But
Who was in The Power of the Dog?
He was the young boy.
What young? The one who was trying to bang Benedict Cumberbatch?
You could say that that's what he was trying to do in the movie. Sure.
Yeah. Him.
Yeah. Him.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah.
I
He was
wondering
also
where I
in
saw him.
Elvis. There you go. Yeah.
He was in Elvis. Who was he in Elvis?
Yeah, he was actually briefly in the beginning when they were still when Elvis was still touring with Hank Snow. Hank Snow had a son who wanted to be like Elvis. That was him.
Oh, I don't remember that role. Well, what?
Yeah, going from Power of the Dog to that role in Elvis, not the best, but
well, it's hard to be an actor. You know, you take whatever roles are given to you. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're minor. But you know what? I respect an actor who says there's no such thing as a small role. I'll do anything.
There we go. I meant no disrespect. So kind of now tell me about, when you watch these films back to back and you did watch them kind of backwards, compare and contrast them for me. Oscar and Eli compared to Owen and Abby.
I think the bullying in the 2010 version, for example, is much more, I don't know, it feels harsher. Right? Even though I think the violence in the Swedish one is actually more physical. The actual psychological warfare behind the bullies is much more prevalent in the 2010 version of what it means to be a bully.
Now, is it because when we kind of first meet Oscar, he is using his knife and stabbing, and when we meet Owen, he's not doing that, is he?
In Owen's version, he is practicing stabbing also, but not
He is.
as it's not as focused as like the original film, right? Like but that's how he meets Ellie. That's how he meets Abby, right? He's stabbing the tree, and then Abby is like, "What are you doing?" Played by Chloe Grace Moretz,
Yeah.
who I forgot. Like, she's so good, and it's such a tragedy that she did Tom and Jerry.
Seriously, that was
In retrospect,
and
like-
that was like the last thing I've seen her in.
Yeah, and she is this actress who I think is so like she reminds me of Florence Pugh, I guess, reminds me of her. Who I think is just like these are such two young, promising actresses. I think clearly Chloe Grace Moretz has done more, obviously, because she's had a longer career so far. But it's just like, God, one bad movie. That's all it takes, I guess, to stop that train.
I guess. Well, yeah. I mean, I will say I don't know of the films she's made of late, other than voicing Wednesday in the Addams Family animated films we covered. Whereas, like,
She's done a bunch.
yeah, but that's the thing. Like, she's done a bunch, but like, I don't know. Florence Pugh, I definitely can see. Like, I agree with you on that. But also, I think Florence Pugh's like younger, and
She is
hate to
younger.
say this, younger and newer in like Hollywood terms,
Totally.
in quotation marks. Whereas Chloe Grace Moretz, she was 10 years ago. Like, I guess now Florence Pugh is her. And Chloe, when she first came out, I mean, she was a force.
Oh yeah,
I think
she
Kick-Ass was the same year as this movie.
I think so too, yeah. And that was another one where she just became like instant star almost, right?
Yeah,
Because she's
yeah.
this little girl cursing, dirty mouth and everything, and she just wows in her small role in 30 Rock wherever she shows up as a guest. Yeah,
Yeah,
Chloe.
yeah.
I
I mean,
love
I
Chloe.
just thought she'd be like one of the biggest bankable stars.
I
I'm
know,
like, hey,
and-
she still could be, but
She,
right now,
is
maybe
how
she's yeah.
you
Well,
know.
she did publicly also say that she had like a really hard time because she was being criticized on her body after this Family Guy joke, and like she really wanted to shy away from the public. I mean, being in the public
Aw,
eye is a
that's
terrible thing.
awful.
Yeah, it really is.
First of all, a healthy looking woman?
I know, seriously, and yet Family Guy just ripped her body to shreds.
That's
so,
fucked up. Well,
Yeah,
there you go. I didn't know that.
I've never liked Family Guy.
No, me neither.
I just want to put that on the record. I've never liked it, guys. Okay. So going back to the movie, though.
Yeah. Oh.
Sorry. Yeah,
Uh,
no, tell me about it since I didn't finish it.
Oh, okay. I mean, other things that stand out. So the bullying. I think we get a little bit of backstory for Abby and her handler, and we discover that he's not the father figure. In this one, it's not said outright, but it's definitely hinted or shown, right? They don't tell us that Abby had a friendship with him at a young age, and he grew up to become her handler, her helper and stuff. And by the time we're at this film, he's tired. He's older. He's just exhausted and stuff, and he is showing it and stuff, and he's getting sloppier in his work, and he has fights with her, despite the fact that he is like also terrified of her. They have
Yeah.
screaming matches that like Oscar is hearing next door. The film also focuses on like kind of their modes of communication, right? We know in the Swedish one that they do communicate with Morse code. Here we kind of see that kind of from the beginning, like how he taught her Morse code so that way they could communicate next to the walls to each other. We see their friendship like actually form into friendship. We see her confusion as like it blossoms into a relationship and stuff. And I say it's confusion because as the movie hinted, she had a past with her handler, the guy that who's watching her and stuff, and you had to assume that like it kind of started off the same way, and maybe it's been so long that she forgotten. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's
I have a
other
question.
things? Yeah, go.
Kind of having the backstory of, Abby and her handler spelt out in this movie. Did you
I wouldn't
feel
say
like,
spelt out. It's
Okay.
just it is
hinted,
just shown.
Well, shown.
Inferred, yeah.
In any way.
Uh-huh.
Because the Swedish film does not show in any way. Did you think it added to it? Did you think it subtracted to it?
It made me appreciate. I liked it when I first saw it, and here since I rewatched these backwards, it made me appreciate this one much more than the Showtime show, right? And I'll leave that at that.
Okay.
That's not to disparage the Showtime show. It just made me say it's just like, okay, but I think I like this. Even Eddie, when he found that out, it was like, oh, that's I did not see that coming. I wasn't sure. I didn't know that that's how that was going to be, like that relationship. It's another form of fucked up that we get to see, and it's just a little bit more laid out for you to see.
Interesting. So then you think that having it kind of told in that way does work?
I
And,
liked it.
You
I
didn't-
thought
you
it
didn't
worked.
wanna. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
Eddie, I don't know how you felt like when you find out that the guy isn't her father. He's like really, in fact, like the guy who's just been maybe in love with her for all these times, or just dearly loved her as a friend.
Yeah, that was a twist.
Is there anything you want to elaborate on that?
I was twisted by it. No, I was no, I did like that element too. And because it was like it made some things kind of creepy. Definitely when she rubs his face.
Okay.
You know. So
Yeah.
that point where she's like touching his face and stuff like that, and he's like, you know, like
a pet.
huh?
He's like a pet. He like
Not
moves
even
into
that,
it, like,
but more like it's weird because I'm thinking it's a father and daughter moment, you know, but then it's not. Then what is this? What is this physical touch about?
Yeah, and
It
the
gets-
order in which you watch things ends up being kind of important when you're watching a story, right? Because if you watch the Showtime first, then you go into the movie thinking father daughter,
Right.
And then when that and that actually I think really affected in a positive way, how you interpreted the American film. But then when you watch the Swedish film, was it a negative impact when you were like, oh, they're not going to address how they're related at all? And I guess that's more a question I have for Eddie. Like,
Well,
when
he
you
hadn't seen
saw
the Swedish
I
one.
didn't see the Swedish one.
He didn't see the Swedish one. I
never
have seen
mind.
it. I never got a chance to show him that one. We were
I
we
wish-
were
I
camping,
wish I
and there was only
did.
so much time that we could like
yes,
squeeze.
no,
it
I
in.
understand.
No,
but so for you then, Rolando.
But for me,
yeah,
it doesn't, because the relationships are handled differently. There's a little more tenderness. There's a little bit more tenderness might be the wrong word. There's the relationship that we see in the American version, the 2010, seems a little bit more fleshed out.
Okay,
We see them fighting, but we see them also being tender with each other. In the 2008 version, we just really see her kind of being monstrous towards him and really cold.
oh,
Right? And I think that might be the difference. But we also see we see his longing, which is why I think that read of him being possibly a pedophile for the Swedish version is an apt read. You can't necessarily say that in the 2010 version. I think they kind of stripped that away. It could be just PC culture. They didn't want to imply that one of the main characters is,
yeah.
But at the same time, it's not that it sanitizes it though, right? It just changes how you read the relationships and stuff. And I think it was the implication making that change of oh, it's not your father. This is because the kid Oscar, he is mortified at that moment. He kind of feels used.
Yes.
When he finds out, he feels it's just oh, whoa, I kind of feel like I've been taken here. So he kind of, I think he immediately leaves after that. He's just I gotta go.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a change that worked. I think one of the other brilliant, beautiful shots. I mean, I think both films are shot very differently. Obviously, Matt Reeves being clearly more American, but there is some changes that he made that I think I appreciated more. There's this great shot when the officer is being murdered, and he's reaching out for help, and we see Oscar kind of reaching back. And he's not reaching back to help him. He's reaching back to grab the door and then close it. And I think that shot is so...
Oscar or Owen?
Owen, I'm sorry, Owen.
Yeah.
He closes the door, and it's a fucked up moment in the movie because he again, this is where we see him choose to actively help her and stuff. And we see,
and it's purely visual. It sounds like
it is purely visual. But
That's
same
great.
thing. He also, I mean, Matt Reeves, he didn't. You would assume he would have done the American thing of showing you the action at the end, seeing the kids getting ripped apart. He doesn't. He actually holds back on the he very similar to the Swedish film where we just see the kid being drowned, and we just see the carnage. I think he shows us like glimpses of like if I remember correctly, he shows us like glimpses of like shadows and like people running and stuff, but like nothing. We don't see anything. We don't see carnage. We don't see the actual carnage. We just see really focusing. The only carnage we see is actually happening in the pool when we see like a head fall in and like body parts and blood. Again, smart choice on Matt Reeves' part, because I think that's one of the most effective parts of the original film, and it works. My other thing I did like, though, is how they handled the handler. Like, the handler, when he's out hunting, those scenes are so creepy. It feels like you're watching, like, Summer of Sam or something. Like a serial killer just stalking in the night, looking for prey. Yeah. And effective, I thought. So, this film, totally creepy. I enjoy it. It's like, it's one of those, like, it's just one of these, like, movies that, like, when I saw it, it made me, in retrospect, because I saw this early on when I think I was still, like, in school or, like, finishing up school or something, or maybe just starting my career, and I kind of like, oh, this is, like, a kind of movie that I would love to, like, make one day. Like,
wow.
Because it's not, because for me, this isn't, again, it's a movie that's a romance coming-of-age story, which I do tend to, not gravitate towards those, but I do like teen dramas, for example, right?
Yeah.
Especially for TV. This had that horror slant that kind of just made it so much more interesting. And that's why I do like both of these versions. I think the Swedish one is a lot colder.
Yes, absolutely.
It feels colder. And the American one has like that warmth to it, that kind of the Swedish one, not needed. It just changed it up a little.
Yeah. And then there's the Showtime television series.
And then there's a Showtime television series 12 years later.
Yeah. Do you know anything about the development of this?
Yes, I actually have that ready this time. Let me see. It was originally developed for A&D, which is, I don't think, a good sign. Then it was picked up in 2016 by TNT. And then TNT in 2017 announced that they had scrapped the pilot and were shopping the series to other networks.
Yeah. It
was in March of 2021 that Showtime ordered the pilot. And later that year, in September, Let the Right One In was ordered as a 10-episode series by Showtime. And the show came out in 2022, as we're in now. And let me see. In October 2022, Jean Avide Lindquist, I think that's the author, mentioned that he had nothing to do with the TV show and lamented inadvertently selling all rights to the book for only 1 SEK when he thought he was only giving Hammer Films the right to make the movie Let Me In, meaning that he'll get no royalties from the TV show. So I guess the author of the book is not happy. Can you believe that?
That is, yeah. Well, I mean, I could tell why, because I actually heard some things about the book that I want to share.
Oh,
But
sure.
Should we share that now?
Sure.
Or after. Okay, so something I read about the book, which I have not read, but that in the book, one, you are actually right, where they do spell out that Hakan is a pedophile. But two...
is that in the book?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And
so then Matt Reeves toned that down.
Yeah. And then Eli is actually a boy who was castrated when he turned into a vampire 200 years ago.
So
and
we have a little bit.
And he dons women's clothes.
So we have a little bit of a trans story also happening
Yep.
here, which makes all those scenes where like the girl vampire says, I'm not a girl." Much more different. Interesting. I wonder.
Yep.
Okay, well now, hang on. I'm just gonna say this. This is gonna piss me off a little bit for this Showtime show, because we had the opportunity here to.
We had the opportunity
to kind of change things.
They went in almost like assumed what the movie was about direction and went with it.
Well, I kind of was hoping that like they were going to do a little bit of introduction of LGBTQ characters for this one. Specifically, I kind of was hoping that the relationship would have been like maybe a lesbian story, like they could have been 2 girls, or it could have been a trans kid who the reason he's being ostracized is because he is trans, or they are trans, right? And they're being they're labeled the other. And guess now, if now you telling me this, like this is writing itself. Like clearly the sexless vampire would be the one to befriend him. Wow. Now I'm mad at Showtime a little bit. I'm so mad you told me that because I actually was.
I'm sorry. I was going to save it for the end.
Watching the show.
Oh, you are? Okay.
I'm going to continue it. I there's some things about it that I do like.
So let's just say right off the bat that this has nothing to do with the novel. I mean, it's just completely, it took the premise and it made it its own.
Yes. Like yes. Fine. The novel,
Yes.
I don't know how much the novel focuses on the relationship between the two kids, but the two films, that is the predominant story.
Yes.
For the series, that's kind of getting swept to the side, which is, I think, such a disservice. But how do you make a TV show about two kids falling in love into an adult series?
You have to throw it in a different story, yeah. And maybe, they were just like, well, Virginia's isn't interesting enough because she gets turned and then dies. So we need something that can carry us through a season, maybe multiple seasons. I'm sure that's the hope. Mm-hmm. So in this Showtime version, we have a father and a daughter, and they are a father and a daughter. It is confirmed. Right. We got Damian Bashir, who plays Mark Kane. And we have his daughter, Eleanor, played by Madison Taylor Baez.
Let me tell you, the dad is, I think, so sexy. Sexy. I think he's very sexual. He has like a sexual energy to him.
Okay.
I don't know. Am I the only one who felt that way? Eddie, no?
He all right.
All right.
Yeah, no, definitely didn't feel that way. And the boy who befriends Eleanor in this one is Isaiah. Yeah, Isaiah. And you know what? Right off the bat, why is this kid uncool? There's nothing, I just don't get it. I don't understand at least how children work anymore nowadays because there's nothing. I mean, at least I got why Oscar was uncool. I mean, he's fucking stabbing trees. He's weird.
Mm-hmm. He is weird.
Right? Isaiah's just hey, how's it hanging? You guys want to see some magic? He's just so sweet and has this positive energy. I don't understand why nobody likes him.
Well, because everyone in New York is jaded, apparently. Oh, that's a major change here. We went from Los Alamos to New York City.
Yes.
I guess
change. So. I guess being in New York and everyone's just ugh, but who is this positive loser who says, how's it hanging?
Ooh, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I feel like the trope of the kid as the outsider, this one, I just feel like these writers didn't know. Yeah. And if you just I just feel like it's just oh my God, how clear you add LGBTQ into the kid's life and now it all makes sense why he's going to be ostracized and be an other. And even that itself might not be enough anymore in New York City.
That's true.
In New York City, it might being gay is just who is it? Who is it?
Exactly. So it's they either really struggled and they were fuck it, let's just make him a magic nerd, which will, I'm sure, come into play later on in the series. Or, because also when we're recording this, 2 episodes have come out. That's it. Mm-hmm. So we're only able to talk about the first 2. If you're listening to this in the future and want to hear us talk about more, we're sorry, we can't.
But you could listen to me in the new podcast, Let the Right Pod In.
I'm not going to listen to that. So it's or they didn't want to risk offending anyone with their representation of what wasn't cool. But at the same time, it's whatever. Be accurate to standards nowadays. It's just really interesting that this is the kid who's uncool. So, and I also they're not establishing him as necessarily troubled or, burdened by this isolation of his. I mean, burdened in a normal way, but not in a different type of way.
No, yeah, he seems pretty well adjusted for
for
he
a
seems child of divorced parents who has a father who has walked out or has been kicked out, right? Who had drug problems, right? Seems like a pretty well adjusted kid. He likes magic.
Yeah, and maybe that's the point in this one. Maybe they're hey, instead of a troubled kid, maybe she gets with a normal kid. Yeah.
The kids are all right.
But again, everyone hates him. He tries to talk to this one girl and she's oh my God.
The most gothy looking kid in all of New York City.
It's too cool for this boy who just wants to show her magic. That's it. It's actually kind of precious. His mother is a cop. and is like, hey, listen, the world out there is it's not safe, it's not accepting, like, be careful. And he's just like, what are you talking about, Mom? How's it hanging? Like, he's just so positive and sweet and all smiles.
I just want to, before we go on, I wish so badly the mom was played by Regina King, because Regina King was a detective in the show Southland. Also, she was a cop in Watchmen. But
yes.
I feel like she would have done such a great job in this role. They would have because
she's too good for it now, though.
She clearly is too good for this.
She's also a filmmaker now, so she's off making.
That's
her
also
own
true.
stuff.
Yeah,
yeah.
She would have had to direct like the pilot episode, and it would have been phenomenal.
Yeah, she's also like in like random commercials now because she's making that money. But anyway, yeah. So there's that, right? That's the Oscar, Eli, Owen, Abby aspect. We have Isaiah and we have Eleanor. But now there is a brand new side plot going on. That actually is how the show opens up on this side plot. And there is a man whose name is Peter Logan, I believe.
He's a millionaire.
He's a millionaire who is dying of cancer. Mm-hmm. And he is estranged from his daughter, played by Grace Gutmer, who is Meryl Streep's daughter.
Oh, is she?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Couldn't see that face?
I didn't.
They have such a similar look.
Yeah. She's got like this facial structure of Meryl Streep.
I didn't. Yeah, she reminded me of someone. I could not put a finger to it. So
Diane Keaton. Yeah. But yeah, no, she definitely
wait, why Diane Keaton?
It was a joke.
Oh, I was going to say, it's just like, wait, Diane Keaton is also Meryl Streep's daughter? What? I was confused for a second. Okay.
But she definitely in that like sequence, is pulling out everything she's got acting chop wise,
Why if you were Meryl Streep's daughter, would you go into acting?
I feel like people who it's like the family business, right? Like a lot of people want to follow in the footsteps of their parents and take over the family business.
Hard shadow to step out of.
So it was like Uma Thurman's daughter.
Yeah.
And she did awesome in Stranger Things.
Yeah, but Uma Thurman isn't as prolific an actress as Meryl Streep.
Oh my God.
No offense. I'm not shading. I'm not shading like Uma Thurman. Like Uma Thurman has a great catalog under her. I'm just saying.
You're right. Yeah, Meryl Streep is
she is a actress. Like we think of like some of the finest actresses of our generations. She is one
Theaters
of them.
will be named after her, kind of a thing. I mean, I think maybe at the end of the day, like they're kids of actors. Like, what the fuck else are they gonna do?
Take singing, do something.
Maybe
I would just be like, find another.
Oh my God,
they're not gonna be pharmacists. They're not. They're just not.
As
so anyway,
these characters are.
Yes.
Oh, technically they're engineers, right? They do. The father made like opioids, basically.
Yes, yeah, he's like he's like the Sackler family.
He made a painkiller that was
highly addictive.
No. The idea was that it wasn't supposed to be addictive,
but people figured it out.
But they melt it and then inject it.
Yeah, and so they're estranged because of that, and she's just like, and also, pretty much she raised her brother,
right?
Who is that? What's his name? Joshua. Peter? Then what's the father's name?
Oh, I don't remember.
So it's Peter Logan. That's the kid.
That's the kid. Peter Logan is the kid. Okay.
So then who's the father? Arthur Logan?
Like Matthew. I don't know.
Okay, so yeah. All right. So Peter's a son. So she raised her brother. Mm-hmm. Like, and then like pretty much one day, the father comes in, takes him out for hunting, and then he dies. And she like never forgave him and they're estranged. Well, it turns out that he actually didn't die in the traditional sense. He became a vampire. And for the last 10 years, his father has been trying to come up with ways to cure him. Mm-hmm. And that's how the series opens is like, this old man takes this young boy outside and is like, look, you can see the sunrise. But then, of course, after a bit, he starts to
flame on.
Yeah.
He catches fire.
It's Arthur. His father's name is Arthur Logan.
He is Arthur Logan. Got it. And so 10 years later, he's still alive, but he's disfigured from, being in the sun and burning. Because I guess at that point he thought,
that wasn't 10 years. That had just happened.
That was recent.
Oh, that just had
just happened. Yeah.
Never mind. So sorry.
Just recent. And it looks like he's healing from it.
He is healing already.
Yes.
Probably the more blood you drink, the more you heal.
Yes. Like in Hellraiser.
Is that...
Well, technically, the more blood that was shed.
Oh, yeah, like that guy. You're right.
There you go.
It all comes full circle.
We just saw that.
No,
So what do you think of
I
this
was thinking
new
of like the
story?
demons.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
was like, I don't think they heal. What?
The Cenobites. What do you think of this new story that they're throwing in there?
So honestly, the news story feels a little generic,
Yes.
but a derivative of like a lot of those like biological dramas, which I can't say I've seen many TV shows like that, but it felt like World War Z a little bit, right?
Okay.
Or 28 Days Later. I'm not, and that's not me throwing shade per se, because I don't think, while it's not maybe the best storyline, I do feel like it's just like I'm interested enough to know how. I'm kind of interested to see like where is this plot going, and I was more curious as like how is this going to be connected to our main characters.
You saw that.
And we saw it. Yeah, they allude to it as like the kids knew each other at some point. They were in the same school camp. It was camp. They were in the same camp.
Yeah.
So did she turn him, or were they both turned together?
It looked like they look like when that picture was taken, they look both human.
They both look human. Yeah. So no, I guess my question is like, did it happen at camp, or were they both
who?
like who turned who? Did one of them turn the other and stuff?
Was there
So
a
yeah,
third
so I
party?
found that story compelling enough for me to like be interested in it. I mean, it completely strips away from like the beauty of like these teenage love stories, right? Because that's what I'm kind of was here for. I'm like, oh my god, how great is this? Like a teen drama with vampires. Like,
Yeah.
it sounds like what's that show?
Twilight.
No,
Vampire Diaries.
Vampire Diaries. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've never seen it, but I hear it's good.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, you do want to do something new, and you kind of need to take things in a different direction, because it's also like, oh, you thought you knew this story. Well, here's a brand new story, and I understand that. But is this a story that not only did I not expect, but did I want? And that's like a question that I guess I have more so from myself, because we're only
Right.
2 episodes in,
Yeah.
so there's not really enough here. But you said you will continue to watch this show.
Yeah, so do you know what it is that's kind of drawing me into this show? I'm not saying by any means that like, because this show does not hold a candle to the original films, but enough to intrigue me. I'll say it's just like I'll keep watching it because I do love the films, and I know where the stories are going to go. So let's see what you're going to throw at me to like kind of make me say it's like, for me, what I actually found myself enjoying, since we're not going to focus on the kids' love story, focusing on the parents of kids who are affected by the vampirism is, I think, what's kind of my driving interest here, or seeing parents in general handling the situation, right? So
or different children, kids who are different.
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite things is like with Eleanor and her dad versus Arthur and Peter, is like seeing the very, very harsh class divide in this story, right? Like the rich have a privilege to get resources. They have the resources to, treat their children, while the poor have to fucking resort to murder to survive. You know what I mean? It's a very, like, Arthur doesn't murder anyone. He has someone else do the murdering for him. He pays the help to do it. And meanwhile, Ellie, she's Ellie in this, she has to depend on her father to survive. And and he's committing these horrible things. He himself is now becoming a monster, and we're seeing his struggle with it.
Yeah,
he actually,
like the rules is that you don't hunt. I do it for you, and we see him do it. And there's even this moment where he kidnaps this man, and the man is pleading with him. Like, I just got sober. I'm doing this for my kids and stuff. And he's like, well, guess what? So am I. And he slits his throat.
Yeah, and he's Isaiah's father.
Yep.
That's the other twist, right? Sorry, guys, for the spoilers.
Yep.
But so that all that stuff I kind of find compelling. Plus, I'm a sucker for father-daughter stories as of late because of playing The Last of Us, which is why I'm so excited for the TV show to come out on HBO. So I'm like behind it. It isn't my favorite iteration so far, but I was just kind of like, okay, I kind of
so-
like what we're doing here.
What do you think this is trying to comment about parenting? You know, taking like, okay, we're not going to tell, or at least the love story is not going to be the only aspect here.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they seem to be taking the love story even in a different direction with changing fundamentally who at least Isaiah is instead of Eleanor. But we have two different parents providing for their children in different ways. And we got one who obviously he's like killing his ass and he's become a murderer, but he's obsessed with healing her, with changing who she is, you know? And Eleanor's more like, well, this is who I am and I should fend for myself and I should do all this. And the father's like, no.
Yeah, because he doesn't want her to become a monster. He actually is trying to protect her from becoming what he has become.
Yeah.
You know, in order to keep her alive. You know what I mean?
To keep her, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, yeah. Like that
I
whole,
like
like, that fierce protection, you know, of trying to prevent your child who, you know, the world won't accept from becoming a monster because you have become a monster but in trying to defend them. I don't know. Do you think there's like a allegory going on?
I think there is. I think they're trying, right? Like it's a show that is trying. I don't know. It won't be. I'm not going to call it the most successful show, but
yeah.
even the mom, she's trying to protect her kid from the harsh reality of the world, right? She's just like she's trying to say, it's just like be normal, don't stand out, just fit in, right? Like as I actually do feel like cops or even people in the military, that's kind of their mindset, right? Like just stand in line,
Don't
you know
stand out. Yeah, you'll make yourself.
it makes sense for this character. So I think I guess that's kind of why I've been enjoying these two episodes. I think I'm not crazy about the storyline about like how I think one of the characters is using the blood of Peter to like create like a highly synthesized drug that turns people into like vampiristic animals. I think that's kind of silly.
Yeah.
I am not digging that storyline. I'm just like, that's one D storyline we could have stripped away from completely.
It's a lot for 2 episodes.
It is a lot. It is.
Like, okay, like let's maybe introduce that in episode 5 or something. But
I do love the idea of vampire chimpanzees. I don't know why that's so horrific because they're already stronger than us.
I mean, vampiric, you know, animals who there's no ration, there's no, you know, thinking to it. It's just pure, you know, animal lust. Is interesting. Well, you know, that reminds me too much though of True Blood, honestly.
Were there vampire animals in True Blood?
No, like like getting high off of V, which they called it in True Blood.
Oh, right,
V,
right,
the
right,
drug
right.
and stuff, and then like, you know, like I don't know. True Blood was just so like definitive though for a while, and I think that also came out around Twilight and Vampire Diaries when like the vampire craze was huge. But like I think of like integrating the books did, yes.
Oh, okay.
But in terms of media, integrating like vampires and how like realistically they would be, you know, treated. I think True Blood really, really kind of like defined that. Because like in every other property, vampires live in the shadow. In True Blood, they live in the light. But it's interesting too because even though the vampires live in the shadow in this one, I don't know. There's almost an element to it of like the vampires are more amongst us in ways that we just don't realize.
In the TV show?
In this TV show, like when he takes his daughter out in the first episode for like, you know, a night on the town, and then he sees a man without shoes on walking around and he's got those crazy eyes. But at the end of the day, he's just a drug addict. You know, there almost is kind of like this weird like drug addict / could be also a vampire. They're so closely resembled in this world. You know, and like I'm sure that we're going to find more and more that there's a lot of people out there who are drug addicts. You know, of course, the main villain, the Logan guy, is pretty much a Sackler.
Right.
So, you know, it's also like, is this a commentary too on like just kind of like last week with like Big Pharma and drug use, though.
Interesting. Wow, is that the theme for October?
Maybe, yeah. The real demon here is drug addiction. You know, because also it's like, is that the allegory that's being presented? You know, you don't want your child to disappear in this terrible addiction. You know, and that's the thing. Like, addiction numbers are up in this country.
Yeah.
And it's a real fear, and it's like, I mean, it's always been terrible, but like it's becoming more and more like, you know, people you know and stuff are really drowning in this.
Well, isn't that what good media is supposed to be, right? Like just, or at least good horror, good sci-fi.
No,
it's
absolutely.
Always allegories on like what parents are fearing the most.
Or just what people are fearing. I mean, if you look at any decade, you could pinpoint the film that like, you know, like The Fly in the 80s, the best film they made in the 80s about AIDS. You know, like always giving a commentary on what's going on in modern in your contemporary society. But it's interesting because then it's like, okay, so that could be a read that like that's what he's trying to prevent his daughter from becoming, you know, a monster to the drug addiction. But it could be another read. The show I think hasn't gone long enough for us to cover, for us to say, you know, and so far the road to getting there as to what the show is like trying to provide us with. I personally don't know if I'm willing to go further to find out, but you are. But also I don't really watch TV. I mean, I think the last time I really got into a TV show, Bly Manor, maybe. I mean, Watchmen was definitely like one that I was like, holy shit, this is like a 10-hour film. It was so good.
But Bly Manor was after.
No, I'm saying Watchmen is like the one that's prevalent in my mind.
Yeah,
but
I mean, but Watchmen is also.
I watched the whole Bly Manor too.
Watchmen is also just that was that was a surprise. Also, when we covered that, I was like, oh, I wasn't aware this show was going to be
that good. It was really good, guys.
That is a high bar for television, though.
Yeah, no, for sure.
One that which is interesting, right? Because it's a Showtime show, so Showtime I have a lower caliber than HBO.
Even
HBO,
though you love
I
Dexter.
demand. Yeah. Even Dexter, but Dexter is a lesser show of like of peak TV. When it came out, it was cool, but like it ran its course. So Showtime is one of those like channels that I'm just like it's just like okay, I'm expecting like a C or a B, right? When I'm always watching HBO, it's just like if I don't get an A, I'm not watching you. You know what I mean? I demand greatness. Yeah. And they usually deliver. That's why my expectations for The Last of Us in 2023 are so high.
Yeah, this is the third time you've dropped that name.
Because this show does remind me of that. A lot of, I don't know what it is. Like, obviously, well, the father-daughter thing is just like, it's so prevalent. Even though the marketing for this show is very similar to The Last of Us, like, artwork, right? Like, the father hugging the daughter and stuff. Like, that's it. It even looks similar to that show. That video game. So knowing that, like, I'm like expecting, like, all right, I'm expecting can I be entertained by you, Showtime? The answer was yes, I was. Is it the exact thing I wanted for Let the Right One In? No, I don't like per se how quickly they drop in the line, like, I had to be invited in. It happens so nonchalantly.
Yeah.
Where in the original two films, the prior two films, like, it's a moment when that happens. Yeah, and there's another follow-up moment where she shows what happens if she's not invited in. You know what I mean? This one, it felt so, like, kind of not important.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, to me, overall, it's fine. I see that it has intention, and I see that it wants to go somewhere with it. But it just also... for me at least, and this is me personally, it has such a tough bar to follow. And it's a bit of an unfair comparison because that Swedish film is so well done. It's so atmospheric. It's so, in a way, like, it's such an auteurist film too. It's just so, like, each frame feels like a painting. And so for me to have that bar set and then approach the television show with that bar is unfair to the television show because it's very much its own thing. But I already got Let the Right One In, the film. So I personally am not looking for, a reimagining or just a different, take on this story. I liked it the way it was. So it's just, hey, if you're interested in it and you think it's good, that's cool and watch the rest of the show. But for me, it was just kind of like fine, and I'm going to probably forget about it by next year.
Probably. So. Let's see where I end up on that. Let's see how the show ends. But
yeah,
I will say this.
Did you watch any more American Gigolo?
No.
Yeah, I felt the same way about that.
But I will say, last closing thought here, though, is I think Let the Right One In is something in comparable hands that could get remade for a very contemporary audience still. In some of those changes that I had mentioned before, right? Like, oh, I didn't know that the vampire was sexless. If you throw in a little trans allegory there now for our bullied character, right? And you throw it, you don't need to make it urban, right? Urban settings make sense for the amount of killings that happen in the show, but You throw it in a rural setting where a trans child will probably be ostracized and almost hated by the community. It makes sense why this friendship would blossom, right? And it doesn't. Maybe we strip away the romantic element, and it's just about a friendship. I think
those are always
it's
sweet
there,
as well. Yeah,
and I think it
is.
could. So I'm kind of upset now that Showtime didn't take the chance. Learning upon this.
Yeah, it's kind of easy to just go the parenting route, guys.
Yeah.
So, but what did you guys think about Let the Right One In, Let Me In, and Let the Right One In? Let us know your thoughts. Email us, remakesrebootsrevivals@gmail.com. Instagram @remakesrebootsrevivals. Facebook.com/remakesrebootsrevivals. Twitter @remakes_podcast. YouTube, search for Remakes Reboots Revivals. And if you enjoyed this podcast, find us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a little rating. Let us know your thoughts, or just follow us on any of your podcasting platforms and give us a nice little rating. And lastly, if you want to call in and let us know your thoughts, call in at this number. Rolando's going to tell you now.
862-248-2326. That's 862-248-2326.
That is the number. So I just want to tell you something really quick. I saw Smile.
Oh, how was it?
Did you see the trailer?
I don't think so. I've only seen like the viral marketing at like the
baseball games.
Yeah.
Well, so I kind of think you should see it.
Yeah?
Because I want to
Is
say
it-
something about it, but I don't want to. It could potentially ruin it.
Okay, fine. Don't ruin it for me. I'm probably not gonna watch it in theaters though.
Oh, that's a shame. Well,
Why?
you didn't see Barbarian.
I mean, you recommend every movie go to see in theaters. Like I'm a very high
I
bar
would
here.
not say go see Don't Worry, Darling or anything like that in theaters. Wait for video on demand. But whenever Barbarian comes out, watch it.
Didn't it
Sad.
come out already?
On video on demand.
Oh.
I think that was better, actually. That's like the ultimate horror film of the year. But
Interesting.
so yeah, horror movies, so much of them. Next week, again, Rolando may or may not be here, so we will determine that shortly amongst us. But until next time,
Stay an original.